Welcome to Canoe Live. I'm Jackie Delaney. More than 1,000 police officers took part in a series of guns and gangs raids this morning in the GTA region and Ottawa. Toronto police were joined by York, Durham, and Peel Region Police, along with the OPP and even border agency officers, as they rounded up 71 people in the pre-dawn hours. It all happened quickly, but it was a long time coming, and that's our in-depth topic tonight. The crackdown on street gangs, dubbed Project Corral, began last summer after a spike in violence in northwest Toronto. The investigation focused on two local gangs, the 5 Point Generals and the Falstaff Crips, over their alleged involvement in drug trafficking and violence, including the homicides of Aaron Grant and Tyrell Duffus. Police say as more details emerged, their investigation went international, and that's when they discovered possible ties to Jamaica's notorious Shower Posse, which was allegedly providing drugs and weapons to local gangs here. This massive raid comes the same week as the federal government prepares to reintroduce legislation to crack down on drug crime in Canada with mandatory sentencing. Using 105 search warrants, officers have so far seized 19 firearms, diamonds, $30,000 in cash, drugs including cocaine, and over 10,000 ecstasy pills, as well as body armor and vehicles. Police expect charges laid to include committing a criminal offense in association with a criminal organization, trafficking firearms and trafficking illegal drugs, robbery, and living on the avails of prostitution. For more on this, we are joined by the Sun's Joe Warmington, as well as Constable Scott Mills, who is the Toronto Police Social Media Relations Officer and President of NoToGangs.org and the Operations Director for the Ontario Gang Investigators Association. And Scott, I am going to start with you. When you have a raid like this, it's a sweeping raid, what's the biggest payoff, for lack of a better word? Is it getting the guns and the drugs off the streets? Is it getting, the gang members off the streets? Is it, just kind of crippling the organization, even if it is only temporary? What's the biggest payoff? The biggest payoff is making the community safer by taking those that are engaged in gang violent activity out of the community and taking their weapons with them. And with that, you put the fears of the community at ease because they're gone, and then it's the entire community's challenge to work together to fill that void and take their communities back. And Joe, would you agree that then at the very least it gives the community some breathing room to come together and say, okay, you know what, it's up to us now to make this a community and give the kids something to do so that they don't turn to guns and gangs?
I don't buy any of that, and I respect Scott a lot, but we both know that this is a dent in it, and all the same things that were going on yesterday are happening today, and what happens is the younger brothers and sisters just take the next spot. They're already involved anyway because they carry the guns a lot of times because they're young offenders. But having said that, this is a great day because we're led by Toronto Police and all these other agencies. What they do, and they've done a great job since Chief Blair has been in the job, is really go after these gangs and let them know that they're not going to run wild in this town. You can see what a bunch of gutless creeps they are with the way they hide, and how they're not so tough today. So it's a nice thing. And then you mentioned the Shower Posse. I don't know if you're going to ask about that, but that's a very significant part of this today, because that's a ruthless, evil, ruthless organization. And,
I do want to ask you some more about that in just a moment, but actually I want to go back to you, Constable Mills, and let you address what Joe was saying. And for sure, it's a dent, and there is always going to be somebody there to replace the ones that you arrested or whatever, but I mean, at least it is a dent. And it is a start. I mean, what else should we do? And I want to ask you about some raids that have happened. We had a big one last April. We had one June the year before that, and June the year before that. Have we seen things change in the neighborhoods that those raids took place in?
I'm in those neighborhoods quite frequently with my regular job, and I've seen a big change in the neighborhoods. Up in that area, we had a BMX bike park that we were very involved with last year up in that area, and the one young man that we employed through the Toronto Community Housing Corporation to actually do that and lead that event, he was scared to go in there and even take the job because he thought he was going to get shot and killed. And this year he's saying, that was a myth. He said, yeah, there's some people that are bad apples, but he said the good far outweighs the negative. And so I've seen the change. We still have work to do, and we can never have enough good activities for our kids.
And I think that's also combined with TAVIS, you know, with the work that they do in areas where there's a lot of trouble. That you certainly see the difference, and I think that you're right. You have to start somewhere, and they do great work. But I think the overall point that needs to be made is that a lot of these people that were arrested today, by next week, and maybe even tomorrow, some of them will be back out. And so they're not convicted. But, I give full marks, to the organization, over 1,000 police officers today, because it really shows that we care about this problem. Because all of the, you saw the drug, thing that was last week you had me on for. Those drugs, for the people that are using them illegally, I'm not talking the compassionate people, it comes from these gangs. This is what it's all about. People die over this. And so hats off to Toronto Police today.
But you bring up a good point when you say that these guys, are going to be back on the street next week or whatever. And this is kind of the argument I've had with some people today who have said, this is just for show or whatever. No, the cops are doing what they have to do and what they can do. I think the failure lies in our courts.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll let Scott answer that as well. The cops always do, especially on gangs in this town, what they're supposed to do. The problem is that the courts are overwhelmed, the jails are full. And that's a whole separate issue. Go ahead. It must be frustrating for you.
Well, it can get frustrating. I think Chief Blair made it pretty clear today that those that are the hardcore criminals that are responsible, every effort will be made to make sure that they stay incarcerated. And that the more minor players, some of them will get bail and they'll be back in the communities. But that's where the police come back into play. We've got our TAVIS, Toronto Anti-Violence Intervention Strategy, and those officers are deployed based on crime statistics and based on known areas where we need to target. So those people that are released, they can expect to have TAVIS officers there to protect the community and make sure that they're abiding by their conditions of their bail. And if they're not complying, they're going to end up back incarcerated.
All right. Well, I thank you both for coming in today.